pregnancy loss is common.
People don't know how to talk about it.
Sometimes it feels like it's been a million years, and sometimes it feels like it was yesterday.
Acknowledge these families that have had loss. Talk about the baby, not by him or her, but by their name.
It's a struggle every day. I pray a lot for all these babies and families that have to go through this loss.
Sometimes I wrestle with how many kids do you have when somebody asks me.
All the babies' lives matter, no matter what.
Thank you for joining us tonight for Tiny Footprints, a candid conversation about miscarriage and pregnancy loss and the grief and healing that come after. It's estimated that as many as 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a loss. In Allen County alone, based on last year's birth rates, that would be an average of 7 pregnancy losses every day. Yet it's a death that is often not talked about. We know tonight's discussion is hard to hear, both for people who understand losing a baby and for people who haven't experienced that grief. But we hope you stay with us. We'll discuss how together, as a community, we can all heal and honor those lives that ended way too soon. We hope the stories offer a sense of comfort and support for those walking through this kind of loss. It can be hard to know what to say when someone loses a baby. That's why we'll also talk about what to say and do to support a family member or a friend, and what might seem helpful but isn't. Last fall, my second daughter, Joy Agape, was born sleeping at 25 weeks after pregnancy complications started at 16 weeks. Hundreds of people reached out to me on social media, most sharing their own stories of losing their babies too. I had no idea pregnancy loss was so common until it happened to me. It was so many of you sharing your stories that encouraged us to have this conversation tonight. We start with a Parkview Health maternal and fetal medicine physician and labor and delivery nurse. We sat down and discussed why losses happen and how they care for both the babies and their families.
Just kind of define the terms, the difference between a miscarriage and stillbirth, and when in the pregnancy those terms change.
Traditionally, most of us are going to talk about miscarriage as a loss that happens in the first trimester. And then we're going to say if there's a pregnancy where the heartbeat stops in the second or third trimester, we'll call it that a stillbirth.
How common is miscarriage and pregnancy loss?
Yeah, if you look at just miscarriage, if you start from going early on, it's estimated as high as 30%. That includes those very early ones. If you get to the point where you can identify a heartbeat on ultrasound, then the miscarriage risk is about 10%. If you start looking into that second trimester, third trimester, we usually quote in the US stillbirth risk of 6 in 1,000, with about half of those happening before 28 weeks and the other half after 28 weeks.
That is still a lot higher than what most people probably think.
Yeah, the thing is, it's something that most of us don't walk around talking about. In my own experience in talking to patients, if you share that experience with people, you actually find out a lot of people have gone through this just like you.
I wish more than anybody it didn't happen, but it is a reality, and it's just so hard for everybody. The nurses and doctors here are invested so much into our families that it's super hard for us as well, that we carry them with us for a very long time, if not forever.
You see this somewhat regularly.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult is that for you as a provider?
It's very difficult. It's actually the hardest part of my job, and I'm sure I speak for everybody here that it's the hardest part of their job. We cry with the patients sometimes. Sometimes we lock ourselves in the bathroom. You know, it's what we have to do.
Is there any rhyme or reason to why these happen?
So sometimes you can come up with some understanding. You could have things like the baby's not growing well, or a structural abnormality, or a genetic condition. But in many cases, you don't understand exactly why.
But most often it is not because the mother did something wrong.
That's a real big, I guess I call it misconception. I think the biggest challenge is whenever something happens with a bad outcome, it's very human to stop and think, what did I do to cause this? What did I drink? What did I eat? What did I lift? What activities was I doing? And that's always the first thing that many people think about. But in reality, very few times was any of this in somebody's control. It's definitely not what you desired. It wasn't anything that you intended. What's really happened is it's an association. You can have things that are recurring and risks that put you at a higher chance of having another loss. But you can also have experiences where you've had 1 or 2 kids with no issue. And then the next pregnancy, you suffer a miscarriage or you have a stillbirth. And we're not able to always get an answer as to why. And so I sometimes will tell patients it's like the rug was pulled from under you.
How do you as a nurse change your care? What does your role look like when a loss is involved?
We go on their timeline. Nothing is rushed, and we hope that, they feel that nothing is rushed. We just meet them where they are, wherever that might be. Sometimes that's sitting at the bedside saying nothing. Sometimes that's crying with them. Sometimes it's laughing, because we do, and just walking them through that path. As far as the baby, we provide the same care that we would with any infant, although we do focus on a lot of memory-making stuff, footprints and hand molds, feet molds. We have an artist that comes in and does a pencil drawing of the babies, simply because they're not going to be taking their baby home. And that's going to be the only thing that they have.
If we're well aware there's a condition that's going to be life-limiting, I have to figure out what can I do to support this person going through the pregnancy. As complex sometimes as the medical discussion can be and the unknowns, maybe I think the more complicated thing is that emotional side of it. I think that's what separates us from just being like, this is an algorithm of treatment, to being, you're a physician. You know how to now individualize the plan, and you're trying to not only fix a medical problem, but you're trying to ameliorate or fix an emotional hardship as well.
What do you hope people watching this take away from this special?
That all the babies' lives matter, no matter what. And that's part of the nurse's job, is to hopefully get the parents and the families to believe that as well in the midst of their grief. That whether the baby was born live and only survived for a very short amount of time, or whether the baby was born sleeping, it doesn't matter. Its life was still valuable. And we want everybody to know that, and to take that away, and to acknowledge these families that have had loss. Talk about the baby, not by him or her, but by their name.
I would hope that maybe when people watch this, they realize that pregnancy loss is common. I would hope that they also take away from it that when somebody loses a child, whether it's very early in the pregnancy or just after delivery or anywhere in between, that the loss is a loss, and it's still something that you will grieve, that you will remember, that you'll think about. It's not something that just goes away, even though people don't talk about it. It's something that you carry with you throughout your life. It's a life-altering experience.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can get over it easily. The other thing I would say, things when I think about this is people who maybe haven't experienced it, who are then put into a position where somebody mentions it to them. Sometimes the best thing to do is just say, I'm very sorry. Many times people want to say something that sounds nice and they don't know what to say, or that there may be terms like, well, you're still young, or hey, you have other kids, or things like that. And they don't mean it negatively, but it comes across in a negative context to the individual. So sometimes just a simple I'm sorry goes a long way.
Preparing for this show, I asked you on Facebook if you would share your lost baby's name to be honored in this special. In less than 24 hours, you sent me more than 900 names. Again, illustrating just how many people have babies who still live in their hearts. When we go to break, we'll be honoring those babies as you see their names listed on the screen. Coming up later in the half hour, we'll meet 2 Ohio moms who are remembering their babies by helping other families heal through a memorial walk. And up next, we talk with counselors and a chaplain about navigating the grief of losing a pregnancy or infant. Welcome back to Tiny Footprints. The shock and grief of losing a pregnancy might not start in a hospital, but the healing journey can. One organization, Little Angel Gowns, makes tiny garments out of the fabric from donated wedding dresses. It gives the babies something to wear and helps the parents feel seen and loved. We did this story on Angel Gowns in November 2022.
They chime every morning at the same time.
A hello from heaven.
The very first time that they chimed was on their funeral day. So I know every day that they are with me.
For the next year after that funeral day,
Stop by.
every day,
Come after work.
Starre and Daniel Musser visited their twin baby boys.
We have them buried about not even a mile away from us. Had everything normal until 20 weeks.
April 2020, the Mussers were shocked to learn they were pregnant with twins. But Starre has a condition that causes ligaments to weaken. By 22 weeks, she was starting to dilate. Doctors were not able to stop the progression.
Baby A, they could not find the heartbeat or anything.
Starre delivered Emmett Joe and Beckett Ray on August 14th, just shy of 23 weeks old.
Baby A was on my chest the whole time. And when he put baby B on me, that's when he instantly passed. So it was a matter of that those boys were inseparable.
As her world shattered, now she had to think about a burial.
I wanted to be able to celebrate them, to be able to honor them the best way that I could. And that was one thing that I'm like, these babies are so small. How am I I don't want to bury them with no clothes or bury them with just a blanket. I want them to still be human beings.
Especially for our tiny babies, being able to dress a baby in something that's beautiful and handmade can be really impactful.
Little Angel Gowns, handmade from wedding dresses, tiny outfits for tiny babies.
These are their heaven outfits. They're going up in heaven in angel gowns.
Emmett and Beckett's were identical, and each gown also has a matching heart for the parents to keep, made out of the same fabric.
We keep those with us, just stating that they are part of us.
Mom has a little piece, a mirror image of what baby is wearing for their eternal sleep.
To have something to hold and touch just kind of, just helps with the grieving process too, I think.
It's a grief Melissa Moore understands. She's now the Fort Wayne Angel Gown coordinator. Her daughter Ashlyn was 4 days old when she died in 2013.
Trying to find a gown for burial, there were no options.
Corey McKenzie is Parkview's maternal child health bereavement coordinator. In 2011, her daughter Nora was stillborn, just 10 days from her due date.
The Little Angel Gowns program wasn't here, it wasn't started yet. So I remember the struggle of having to go to the mall and find a gown that was appropriate for her burial. I'm thankful that other families don't have to go through something like that when we're able to offer them the Little Angel Gowns.
This is a little size 0 gown, so this is 1 to 2 pounds. This one I've done for a little boy.
Angel Gown area seamstress Barbara Kramer's been a labor delivery nurse for 38 years.
And unfortunately, there is the sad side of labor and delivery when babies do not survive.
She heard about the Angel Gown program in Indianapolis and helped bring it here.
I made the first gowns by myself in October of 2014.
Now, one day every month, a conference room at Parkview Regional Medical Center becomes a sewing room. volunteers carefully craft angel gowns, ornate with beads and lace, stitched with love and compassion.
Making something beautiful that will provide comfort.
The group makes 10 to 20 garments a month.
This will tie just around the neck of the baby. It does not have a back.
From the smallest size for a baby born at 14 weeks.
We call these angel wings.
Up to a 13-pound infant.
It's something that's handmade specifically with a lot of love by somebody who cares and acknowledges the depth of the situation.
Draping the baby with dignity.
We still gave them that honor.
And the parents with kindness.
Knowing that it's somebody's love wrapped around them every day.
Starry and Daniel lost a third baby, Pruitt, in 2021. Then the couple welcomed a healthy baby boy on October 16th, 2023. Little Adler will turn 2 later this month. Angel gowns are just one of the many things hospitals do to help parents make memories with their baby, even after he or she has died. From hand and footprints to photographs, the intention behind the postmortem palliative care is to acknowledge the baby's life and help the parents start processing their grief. To talk more about that, we have 3 guests with us. You met Corey McKenzie in that story. She's Parkview Health's maternal and child health bereavement coordinator. We also have John Swanson, a Parkview chaplain, and Lydia Hens, a licensed mental health counselor. Now, John and Lydia, I know you also have experienced the grief of pregnancy and infant loss. Would you be willing to share a little of your story, Lydia?
Sure. Our daughter, Elizabeth, was stillborn on January 9th, 2021. We don't know what happened with her. Likely it was connected to me having had COVID during that time. And then shortly after that, I got pregnant again, and we had a 7-week miscarriage in March of that same year.
Yeah, that's hard. John?
Catherine Ann was born in July 28th, 1989, and then lived for 5 weeks and died September 1st. We knew that it was coming because she was a trisomy 18 baby. So about halfway through the pregnancy, we found out that she had about a 50% chance of being alive. So we got to meet her and hold her and all those things. And while everybody else was being really hopeful, we were making funeral arrangements.
Yeah, and that's a hard place to be. Thank you for sharing those. How important is the memory making that you do at Parkview and other hospitals do too, to acknowledge these babies and the lives that they had?
I think so many of our parents walk into pregnancy expecting, obviously, to take home a baby. And so when they have to leave the hospital with empty arms and a box of keepsakes instead, those become the touch points for their grief and for the way that they can continue to incorporate baby into their life in the future. And so it seems simple to do footprints and handprints and make little bracelets with baby's name, but those become such important parts of the future grief work and keeping baby present with them as life continues with their new normal.
Yeah. And John, you'll often visit the families in the hospital. What are those interactions? What are your discussions like?
We have this mix of business-like in those conversations and providing support. And what's true about infant loss is that you're going to be grieving stories that haven't happened yet and are still very real. So that's where the memory making is important. That's where in those conversations I'm saying names. If the family is open to me, I'm holding the baby so that somebody that's got this label that's related to God is actually holding and saying the name of their child. Because what we know is that's not going to happen anywhere else outside of that room.
Yeah. How has the hospital approach changed over the years? When I had my loss last year, a lot of women and men reached out with their own stories, and some talked about losses 30 years ago that still feel fresh, and they were not allowed to hold their babies because they, quote, couldn't handle it. And it's so different now.
So my own loss was in 2011, and I think I probably got what was the standard care at that time. I had also reached out to friends who had lived similar experiences and came in with my own plan to supplement that, to make sure that we had more things to bring home. And when I started working in family birthing in 2014, I came in with the goal to continue to do what we were doing and make it better. So we've worked really intentionally as a healthcare system to bring an intentional program to life where we are giving parents and grandparents and siblings the opportunity to bond with baby and build those relationships, even though it's an echo of what they expected it to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because of my loss being more recent in 21, all these resources existed, except because it was January 9th, 2021, it was right at the end of COVID. And so I had COVID. Having worked at Parkview, was just cleared that day to return to work from my COVID because it was the 10-day observation period. But we ended up being in Illinois, and they were much more strict and had the 14-day period. So I was still COVID infectious when she was born. So they actually weren't going to let my husband even in the hospital. And so he had, luckily he had come in with me instead of parking the car. And they were like, if he leaves this room, he will not be allowed back in the facility. And so our other 3 kids were just, being taken care of without him. But we didn't have any of the resources. We couldn't even have a spiritual advisor come in because of the COVID. So all we had was one set of prints was all that the hospital could do. So even in more modern times, we have, not as many resources all the time. And so I think that's beautiful what other families can get from Corey and what you got to experience.
Yeah. And the grief just is starting in the hospital. It is truly, it never really ends. It is an ongoing process throughout the rest of your life. How do you speak with women and families as they are navigating this journey?
So there is a wonderful woman, Lois Tonkin, and she has a theory of grief, and that is that our grief doesn't get less over time, but we grow around our grief. So our containers to carry grief get bigger, our capacity to carry grief get bigger, and that's what I like to say, right? 20 years from now, our grief is still going to be fresh. 40 years from now, we're still going to miss and long for our babies, but we get better equipped to carry it over time.
I think that the grief can be similar for losing a pregnancy, losing an infant, as it is to losing another loved one or friend. But the conversation around that death, I feel, is very different. Do you think it's a different how people react to and talk to you about the miscarriage or pregnancies versus your mom, dad, brother, sister?
100%. Because people have never met the child. Sometimes dad has never met the child. And so there's that awareness that maybe this is a mythical kind of thing. And so people just don't know how to talk about mythical things that way. And so as much as mom is aware that this is a real death, because this is a real life, as a society, we are really bad at death, period. And then when it's an imaginary death, we're even worse. So I think that your experience kind of demonstrates that it's still looked at as a luxury rather than a necessity to provide this care around a real death.
How do we start changing that conversation?
So this conversation, this program, the initiative that you started back in August, you posted in August and had 800 responses, mostly names that are going back decades in experience. What it's doing is it's bringing the conversation up and allowing people to say, oh, me too, rather than constantly having to prove that I had a loss. There's oh, I did have a loss. You did too. And it's not a, we can get over this. It's a, oh, so I don't have to explain what it's like to be in the middle of this. We can talk together about what it's like to be in the middle of this. And that's a huge and helpful thing. And then other people watching can see those conversations and go, oh, this is a real thing. So this program, this initiative that you're doing, you would a million times rather not do it, right? So a million times you would rather be holding joy.
Yeah.
That said, this opportunity in these conversations are helping foster that literacy about grief in our community.
Yeah. Grief literacy, you mentioned that to me. What is grief literacy?
So grief literacy is being able to be helpful to people in loss, particularly a death, on behalf of people, families, communities, by having skills and stories and words and concepts about grief and about walking through it.
You mentioned this too, that we're also grieving a future that we imagined happening that won't happen. So how do you navigate that when, and you have other children, and you will have times when you think, oh, this baby should have been doing X. You think, oh, they would be going to kindergarten now. They would be in 7th grade now. As the years progress, that doesn't go away.
Right. So kindergarten was one of those moments that I had run to Target, like we all do, for school supplies, and had picked up things for my older daughter and my younger daughter. And I was driving home. I realized, and I started sobbing at the light right by Northside High School, I should have bought a 3rd set of school supplies. And I had to be present in that grief and allow that wave to come over and just feel what I needed to feel, because that is one of those missed moments that we need to give ourselves permission to grieve, because they are those things that our kids should be doing, and we are kind of bystanders. Nora would be in 8th grade, and so I'm like, what high school would she be wanting to go to? What would she be thinking? How would she argue with her sisters? Those are all things that we just don't have the privilege of knowing.
Yeah. Lydia, how do you counsel people through grief and letting people realize that they have the permission to feel all the feels?
Mm-hmm. First off, I always say there's no timeline, right? You can be sad forever. There are going to be moments you're sad. There are going to be moments you're happy. And you're allowed to feel whatever you want to feel for how long you need to. So I think that's a really important part of just acknowledging what you're feeling in the moment and that it's okay. And not trying to just gloss over it. Not say, oh, I don't have the space to deal with that right now. Or, for our family, we incorporate our children, right, as often as we can. We celebrate their birthdays. We hang stockings for them at Christmas. We, do different things that just incorporate them and talk about them, because they're lives that existed and should be celebrated. I think the number one thing that I talk to a lot of my clients about is naming their children. It's interesting how many people feel like they need to have permission to name their child, which just is something, we shouldn't need permission to do. Your child has a name, and you should be able to call them by their name. And I think that is one of those changes from 30 years ago that you mentioned, right? A lot of people didn't even know what gender their baby was or get to hold them or anything like that. So it was just, yeah, I had a baby and they died. But we can say, I have Elizabeth, I have Emerson, and we talk about them.
Yeah, and that goes into what I wanted to talk about next is siblings. Sometimes there are older siblings who are very aware of the pregnancy and then are very aware of a baby not coming home at the end of that pregnancy. The siblings also might be too young to really know what's going on if it was close in age. So let's start with the older siblings. What advice do you have for parents counseling their older children through the grief of the loss of an infant or pregnancy?
I was going to say, Corey, she brought me a bunch of books after our daughter was born, and they were a bunch of beautiful children's books. And now they live on the bookshelf in my office, and I recommend them all the time. So she had great resources for that.
Yeah, we locally have an organization called Noah Bears, and so all of our big siblings get to take home a teddy bear in honor of their baby that isn't coming home. And then also books, sometimes working with our child life specialist, and also reassuring parents that it's normal for kids to be very present and very sad or angry or tearful and feel that at whatever intensity, and then 30 seconds later be asking for a fruit snack pack, because they're present in the moment, they feel what they need to feel, and then they let it go. And even if they don't fully understand, they're still aware of the changes in mom and support person's mood and the ways that the house feels different. So giving them space to, feel what they need to feel too, because they are small humans with a whole broad range of emotions as well.
And I found with Chloe, she was 3 at the time, she's 4.5-ish now, that it's changing as she gets older and she can understand more. So even as the children grieve, as they get older, your counseling and your help with them is going to change too.
Well, it's that reminder that as adults, we have a hard time figuring out what the feelings are. And we've got words and we've got concepts and we've got people we can talk to. Kids have these awarenesses of something being disrupted, but they've got none of the words and they've got none of the concepts. And so leaving that kind of space and getting rid of us expecting them to feel a particular way, trapping them in how they ought to be experiencing the loss of this brother, sibling, sister, sibling. The other thing is Erin's House for Grieving Children in Fort Wayne is awesome. They provide support, they provide ideas, and those times when we can't come up with the ideas, Erin's House does a great job.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've learned from Erin's House is using real words. So we didn't lose the baby. Oh, where did he go? The baby died. And those, the true, just hard fact words are important in understanding what happened too. Let's talk about siblings who might come after a loss. You mentioned that you always talk about your children, and so it was just always part of it, and I know you do too. But how do we call them rainbow babies, but how do we also not make sure that they don't feel extra pressure to somehow live up to filling this void of a baby who died and then they came along? I feel like there's a really delicate balance of they need to know their family story, but then also not putting unfair pressure on them.
At risk of putting a younger sibling that I know of on the spot, that term rainbow baby ends up being a really hard label because it comes with expectations, because you got to have another one to replace the one that you lost, and that one is me. And that's just a really hard thing. Expectation around grief is, you talked about that already. We create these expectations around grief, and it's a problem. And the more we can release those, the better off we are.
I agree. I love the concept of a rainbow baby. I love the concept that whole saying represents, if you will. But to put that label on a child, I think it's hard for them to always be the rainbow baby because, I do have a baby who was born after both of her siblings died. And she knows of them. And she knows, well, she's 3. She's trying to know sometimes, like, well, where were they before I was born or after? And, we have those conversations with her so she knows about them, but never that she is the replacement for them. At the end of the day, we want all 6 of our children. We don't just want 4 and the other ones are disposable.
Right.
I think the other burden there is there are lots of people who don't have a child after the death. And so it becomes oh, you got a beautiful rainbow baby. We didn't get a beautiful rainbow baby. And so it creates that kind of pressure that's not helpful. It's part of that literacy thing, of being aware that sometimes there's deaths and there's another child, and sometimes there's death and there's not another child. And it doesn't mean somebody's blessed and somebody's not.
Right.
I think it's also the replacement factor too. So many people are like, oh, okay, you have your baby now, so you're not sad anymore.
And I think it's really important to remember that every child is a unique and individual person, and their stories are different, and we're responsible for carrying their stories and helping shape the experiences of each of our kids. And and every personality is different. I remember bringing home our youngest and being so thrilled that, we had completed that picture of having 2 girls in our house, but at the same time, that baby was not an easy baby, and we had some perinatal mood disorders that cropped up afterwards. And I don't think that we had overwhelming expectations for, the role that child would fill. But I think also we were like, okay, she's here, she's safe. But also sometimes babies are not easy babies to care for. And they let their personalities shine from the get-go. And that was our experience. And it was not all sunshine and rainbows.
Right. Let's talk about things that people say that they think are being nice and they're hurtful. I was in a store after I had lost Joy, and I was off of the air for some leave, and this woman called out to me and wanted to know where I was, asked if I'd been hiding under a rock. And I said, well, my baby died, and so I'm on leave. And without missing a beat, she looked at Chloe sitting in the cart and said, well, at least she got that one. And you touched on that having other children does not take away from the loss of this child. But what are some other things that might seem like they're being helpful or nice, but can be hurtful that you've heard or heard about?
Aren't you glad they're in a better place? No, I would actually rather they were right here.
And any statement that starts with "at least" is only going to minimize the experience. At least you have Chloe at home. At least we had our oldest. At least you didn't really know them yet. At least it was early. None of those statements are helpful.
And immediately starting into telling your own story is not a helpful thing. Oh, I know what happened with me, and yeah.
Right. On the flip side of that, what are some good things to say? Let's give people some tools to help a friend or a family member who experiences this type of loss. What are some things that they could say or do? Because I think the intentions of most people are good. They do want to help. They just don't know how, and they don't want to make it worse. So what are some things that they could do?
I start with "this is hard" with a period after it. We do so much comma, we do so much but, we do so much whatever. And to start with that acknowledgement that this is hard, period, is huge.
I think people have an idea that they're going to make you sad if they bring up your baby. And in reality, that's what most parents want. I don't want my baby to be forgotten. So naming the baby, calling them by their names, remembering the days they were born or whatever days parents find meaningful to celebrate them, and bringing them up, because you're not going to make someone more sad by bringing up their baby.
And 6 months later and a year later, and so Catherine died more than 30 years ago. There are people who still remember and remind us on her birthday. And it's like, oh, that's a big deal. Catherine doesn't care, but we care deeply about that remembering.
The first encounter that I had with stillbirth was in September, and most years I still remember to text that friend on her son's birthday. And I know the people that reach out and do that for us, like that's so meaningful, even without a social media post or any of those things, to know that people just remember, even if they haven't marked in their calendar. I don't judge. But yeah, taking time to send a note, even just say their name, thinking of you. I know it's a hard day.
Yeah, it can be short, it can be simple, but just knowing that you're not forgotten. Yeah. How is the grief of this kind of loss different for men? You mentioned that, they're not the ones carrying the child, so there's a different experience there, and they probably also feel like they need to help the mother grieve as well, and they're still trying to process their own feelings. What advice do you have for men grieving this loss?
To acknowledge that they're grieving and to allow them to know that the range of feelings that they're having is actually grief. Because, again, culturally, we're not great with men in grief, just like we're not great with women in grief, just like we're not. And so to acknowledge that that's grief, to provide opportunities for conversation, to provide space to talk, and to include the fact that there is a death as part of the conversations that we have, in a similar way that we would acknowledge the death of a parent, the death of a sibling, the death of a close friend, so that it can normalize, it can bring to the surface. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
I feel like I tell pretty much every family that I work with that you're making the best decision you can in the moment with the information you have. And that's for both parents. And I think that knowing, also educating on the fact that like your grief paths are going to be different, and you need to figure out ways to communicate when it's a bad day or an extra heavy day. And that like if you're having a light day and your partner is having a heavy day, like it's okay. You're both just doing the best you can, because we all move through it in our own unique way.
Yeah. So for men and women who have experienced a miscarriage and pregnancy loss in their family, what are some of the resources available to them for healing, for counseling? Where can they go if they are looking for that kind of support?
So we have a pregnancy loss support group and also a pregnancy after loss support group that meets at Parkview. We have online resources. Postpartum Support International has some online support groups that are free, Resolve Through Sharing, and Return to Zero. Star Legacy Foundation. There's lots of online places. I also know that people use their social media to create an algorithm that feels like it's reinforcing the things that they need in those moments, which can be positive or negative. And also I think connecting with real people is really important though too, whether it's a virtual support group or in person or therapy. My therapist, Janet, was my good friend for a couple of years after our loss because I just didn't know how to move through the grief well.
Yeah.
And I obviously am going to be an advocate for therapy and finding a good, support in that area. I think something that's often maybe minimized is the pregnancy after loss. If you do end up having another pregnancy, is how complicated that is. I say that sometimes loss steals the magic from pregnancy. And there's so much more anxiety. You realize, there's no such thing as a safe period. And then after the baby's born, kind of like you alluded to, Corey, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be okay now, like this baby is here and now this baby is crying a lot, and I realize I have a postpartum mood disorder. My own experience was almost an obsession with getting pregnant again and having a living baby, which was not healthy. And so my daughter was born, my living daughter was born February 7th of 22. And so if you think about how I was pregnant 3 times in 2021, which was not good for my mental health. So making sure you find someone to walk that pregnancy with you, who follows you postpartum, because sometimes it all hits in the postpartum period where you're not pregnant anymore. You've achieved the goal, and oh, everything's not better. I thought this would make everything better.
Right. Is there anything we haven't discussed that is important to add to this conversation?
I talk a lot with grandparents of the baby, and I like to acknowledge there is a space that grandparents are grieving twice, because when you are a parent and you are trying your best to support your child, and it doesn't matter if it's the person who's birthing the baby or their support person, your heart is breaking for them. And as a parent, you want nothing more than to put it back together and make them feel better. And then they're also grieving the loss of their grandbaby. And so they have layers of emotions that they're working through too. I talk about, the pregnancy loss being like the ripple. You drop the stone in the water and there's all these ripples, and it's the parents and the siblings and the grandparents and the friends and the workplace that you're returning to. Like, all of these people and places are impacted by this story. And so just acknowledging that we're all walking through this with you, all having our own unique experiences. And they're meaningful for all of us.
I think one thing with grandparents too is, or friends and family in general, is a lot of times there are the resources that take pictures of your baby in the hospital, right? I'm on the board of Loving Benjamin, which is a beautiful organization that takes the pictures in the hospital. And I have so many clients come to me and say, I have these beautiful pictures, but nobody wants to look at them. And so, looking at the baby and saying, oh, they look like your husband. They have your eyes. They're beautiful. Just acknowledging that.
And relating partially to grandparents, but for all of us, deciding how we want to talk about how many children or how many grandchildren we have is a very interesting thing. That was hard for us because one of the grandparents did not include Catherine in the list of the number of grandkids. On the other hand, I don't always talk about having 3 kids, because there are times that I don't trust people enough to entrust that to them. But I think that that's a thing that we get to navigate, is how many kids do you want to talk about having, and do you trust the people that you're telling that to?
And I think that's one of my always topics for therapy after you've had a loss, is how do you refer to the number of kids you have, because it's so complicated and not everyone deserves your story. You don't have, maybe you're just not in the space where you want to share your story, and you can acknowledge that's okay. I don't want to say that right now, and they don't hate me for not acknowledging them, and I'm not letting them down by not acknowledging them. My personal preference is I will usually say that I have 6 kids, or I will say I have 4 living children. And saying 4 living children, people know if they want to ask a follow-up question or not. And sometimes I think people are a little rude, and if they're going to ask you invasive questions, maybe you give them an answer that makes them feel a little uncomfortable. And I think that's okay too.
Right, but allowing yourself, again, giving yourself permission that you can control that narrative based on the situation where you are. Yeah.
And sometimes I just say, there's a lot of kids up in here, because there are.
Oh, Lydia, Corey, John, thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. And we hope that we've allowed people in the community to have a better understanding and a jumping off board for healing and for helping that maybe they didn't have before this. So I appreciate all of your time and your insights.
And thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. It's an honor to be here.
lose a pregnancy or an infant dies shortly after birth, they often ask why. Why did this happen? Why me? For two moms in Antwerp, Ohio, some of the whys will never be answered, but they're answering one of them by creating an event to help other lost families heal through community, one step at a time.
Megan Martinez and Courtney Dooley share a bond no mother wants.
She was with us for about an hour before she passed away.
Took us in for an ultrasound. There was just no heartbeat.
Their baby daughters no longer in their arms.
Sometimes it feels like it's been a million years, and sometimes it feels like it was yesterday. There's definitely a before Megan and an after Megan.
Megan's first pregnancy 11 years ago seemed normal until it wasn't. The day before her due date, her daughter didn't have a heartbeat.
I don't even know that I even realized the finality of those words. I thought, we're at the hospital, we're gonna go, and we're in trouble, but things might be fine.
July 3rd, 2014, baby Harper was born sleeping.
6 pounds, 14 ounces, 20 inches long. Full grown, perfectly healthy otherwise.
Doctors did a lot of testing, but couldn't find a reason why Harper died. While Megan's family continued to grow over the last decade, Harper was always at the center of it.
We incorporate her a lot in our lives. My kids always talk about Harper, even my 5-year-old.
But that doesn't take away the pain of losing a baby, something other people don't always understand.
They think, well, you'll have another one. But it's also like, which one of yours would you want to give up? You know, and that's just, none of them is always the answer. None of them.
It's a struggle every day.
Courtney was due with her second daughter in June 2024, but in February, she got sick.
I had sepsis and pneumonia.
Valentine's Day last year, her body went into preterm labor, and baby Violet was born at 21 weeks.
13.4 ounces and 11 inches long. To go to the NICU, you have to be 22 weeks.
Photographs and footprints also now part of their family story.
We have her box out in our living room, and then we have like books that have her footprints in it. Sometimes my daughter will ask us to read it to her, so we just kind of incorporate her in everyday life and talk about her.
As Courtney's 3-year-old daughter and 7-month-old son grow up, they'll know about their sister Violet, sharing their siblings' story, changing the way pregnancy loss is talked about.
When people see you when you're pregnant or you're just walking and you have your kids, that they're like, oh, they're your kids, 1, 2, there you go. And then, you know, it kind of just gets into, well, you know, one's in heaven, and people just think, oh, here, there's your children, where it's like, they're not, but.
Sometimes I wrestle with, how many kids do you have, when somebody asks me? And I will usually say 4. I tell them, you know, my first daughter, Harper, would be 11. She passed away, and I get a lot of people who will say, oh, what's her name, if I didn't mention it, and I just love that. It's uncomfortable, but it's reality. And those people help me heal a little each time, I think, because it's just nice. It's nice to speak her name.
Through memory boxes and memorial benches, Megan and Courtney honor their daughters, and now they're helping other families heal too.
For a long time, I had wanted to do something more. How can I channel this grief? Because it's lifelong.
The mom started the Little Footprints Memorial Walk last year. More than 200 people came as 58 babies were recognized on remembrance signs.
Families can stop and take pictures, stop, say a little prayer, just a little word to your baby in heaven.
It was amazing to see like our little community have that much people come and care and just walk for their babies and just support everyone.
It was a great day, and we had people leaving the walks ready for the next year.
The second annual Little Footprints Memorial Walk in Antwerp was this past Sunday. Another memorial walk in Allen County happened on Saturday. People gathered in Huntertown Family Park for Walk to Remember. In addition to memorial signs along the path, people could participate in other memory-making activities.
It is always such a powerful day. You see everything from anger to tears of joy, even as crazy as that sounds. It is just really beautiful to be able to remember these babies who we've lost way too soon. to see families who have gone on to have more children, siblings get involved. The emotions just run all over the place, and it's just really beautiful to see.
It's not too late to join in another Remembrance Walk in Fort Wayne. The Pregnancy and Infant Loss Walk, hosted by Young Mothers of America, is this coming Saturday, October 11th at noon at the McMillan Park Pavilion. And we'll be right back. October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, created by President Ronald Reagan in 1988. The conversation continues right now on Wayne.com with extended interviews, as well as links to many resources and organizations that can help you navigate pregnancy and infant loss. To the moms and dads who've lost babies, you are seen. You are not alone. You matter, and your babies matter. To everyone else, even if you don't know someone who lost an infant or pregnancy today, you might tomorrow. We hope you now have some tools to better know how to be helpful and supportive as we all remember the tiny footprints that don't walk on earth, but are forever in our hearts.